Now for more on experiencing sports in virtual reality, I'm joined by Tyler Gates from Brightline Interactive. Welcome to the show. Now, Tyler, what are some examples of how we're seeing virtual reality being used at the Rio Olympics?
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing now is that, as they were talking about, there are select sports that basically, where they're setting up 360 cameras to allow Samsung users to have this enhanced experience. And what's cool about that is they're able to see the sport in a different way, from a new angle, essentially.
Now, for some people who weren't lucky enough to go to Rio, VR does add that other viewing option, but then there are some people who want the tried and true, just the television experience. So for people who haven't tried VR and don't really get what all the hype is about, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I'd say it doesn't necessarily replace watching it on TV or going, obviously. But what it does is add this enhanced experience. You know, like I said, it gives you this ability to see the content from a different angle and to be able to sort of see it in 360 degrees and almost as if you're there, right? The next best thing, I guess.
And when we tried some of the VR stuff earlier, we talked about some of the angles, because usually when you're watching it on your television, you're only seeing whatever the camera wants to show you. So what is the added layer you get from virtual reality that you wouldn't get from TV?
Yeah, I mean, the nuance to it is that the user, instead of sort of being directed to see what the camera operators want the user to see, now the user gets to pick what they want to see, right? So they could be watching a play happening over here, or the camera could be watching a play happening over here, but if the user wants to see a play happening over here, they can decide and look somewhere else.
So a lot more control for the viewer.
Yeah.
Now, what about the industries? What are the industries that we see VR used in now versus potentially their future uses?
Yeah, I mean, that's, for us at Brightline, that is one of the most exciting things, is right now we're really just seeing it be used in the sporting and entertainment space. That's the most obvious space because that's where brands are, that's where all of the eyeballs are. But really, I mean, there's sort of this limitless possibility. There's lots of different industries that can any time where you want to put a person in an environment where they normally could not be, that's an industry for VR.
Now, with that being said, if you're selling this VR reality option, should sports venues then be worried that people perhaps won't go to the games if they could just kind of sit at home instead of spending a lot of money, especially depending on the sport? It can be very expensive once you factor in parking and all the other costs.
Sure.
Should they be worried about losing fans actually coming to events?
I don't think so. I actually think it enhances ticket sales because I think that, you know, even as a creative technologist, you know, I don't think that virtual reality technology is going to replace the in-person live experience. I think what it does is it draws a younger crowd and it allows them to sort of feel like what it would be like to go there. It's almost advertising for showing up, right?
That makes sense. Now, let's also talk about the cost of experiencing virtual reality, especially during the Olympics. You have viewers in the US who have to pay for a subscription service, the Samsung headset, and then also link that to their Galaxy phone. So do you think there's a chance that VR could perhaps price people out or perhaps go the way of Google Glass and just people just don't want it?
Yeah, I think that right now, I mean, we're still right at the beginning, right at the precipice of VR. And so but right now, I mean, most of the headsets are less expensive than a mobile phone. And so I don't necessarily think it's too expensive at this point, even with the comparison with Google Glass. I mean, Google Glass was $1,500 a unit. Most really solid, you know, VR headsets you can get for $300 to $600. And so I don't think it's necessarily going to price itself out. In fact, the costs are just going to drop.
Now, for people who haven't had a chance to experience VR, what's it actually like? Because some people might be worried that it might be a bit too overwhelming to kind of go from being on the outside looking in to just being dropped into this new reality. What are you finding?
Sure, I think right now, I mean, when you try it for the very first time, it is a little bit overwhelming because you're being introduced to a whole new viewing angle. Instead of seeing something on TV, now you are the subject. You're inside the environment, and you're able to select. And sometimes people have a hard time understanding that they don't just have to look forward. They can look all around them and see the entire, you know, expanse.
And just like lastly, are there any challenges you think that could perhaps hamper the growth of this industry?
You know, I think not really, because I think that right now what we're seeing is price points dropping from hardware. The cost of content creation, which is what we do, that cost is dropping. And I think that as the technology becomes more ubiquitous, as the hardware becomes more ubiquitous, and as prices continue to drop on the content side, we're just going to see more and more companies wanting to start using VR for their audiences.
Well, it's definitely something we'll be keeping an eye on. I had a chance to try it myself. I must say, it was a little bit overwhelming. If there's any message that you'd like to give to people who haven't tried it and are still kind of wary about having another gadget, having another pair of goggles on their face, what would you tell them?
I'd say that the content is worth it, and they basically imagine being able to be put in these environments that you wouldn't normally be able to go, in the locker room at halftime to see the pump-up speech, or even places that technologically and physically we can't go, like the surface of the moon or Mars or things like that, where we can basically recreate what it's like to be in these environments, except you're seeing it as if you were there.
Well, certainly something people will be keeping an eye on, and I would encourage everyone to give it a try. Thank you so much for joining us. Tyler Gates, Principal at Brightline Interactive.
Thank you.